Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to day 4 of International Leadership Week 2021. I am Rod Jones, Content Manager at the Institute of Leadership and Management, and just before we start our webinar on remote leadership and asynchronous management, I want to share with you a short introduction to the Institute. We are a professional body focusing on developing leadership capability for over 70 years to achieve our core mission, which is to inspire great leadership everywhere. We have an engaged community of over 50,000 leaders and managers at every stage of their career across all industry sectors and over 70 countries. And I'm delighted today to be joined by Molood Ceccarelli. Molood has founded Remote Forever with the vision of bringing remote working to digital transformations in companies around the world. In this inspirational webinar, Molood will show how to communicate and collaborate remotely to maintain business agility in a future where teams are remote by default. So without any further delay, I really am delighted to hand over to Molood.
Do you hear me fine?
Yes, fine, Molood.
All right, remote leadership and asynchronous management. As Rod just introduced me, I am Molood Ceccarelli. I'm the founder and CEO of Remote Forever, a company that helps entrepreneurs and leaders in distributed companies that are adopting agile ways of working to do so, while addressing the challenges of their remote workforce. We focus on 3 different pillars: business operations, culture, and leadership. And today I want to talk to you about the leadership aspect of that. My work has been featured in places like Huffington Post, Forbes, Entrepreneur, and I had the honor of being selected as one of the top 2 remote innovators in 2021. Those are my credentials. I'm going to ask you a question though. Where do you go to get real work done? When you want to be productive, when you want to get in the flow, in the zone, and produce something of value, maybe a presentation, an algorithm, a report. The answers that I usually get to this question are a cafe, my home office, or a closed conference room, or my basement, or my home office. Some people even say my desk at the office before everyone comes in, or my desk at the office after everyone goes home. The thing is, nobody ever says my desk at the office during work hours is where I'm most productive. And yet, companies are investing millions in real estate, renting or buying offices in prime locations in cities for people to go to and not be productive at. It is really strange, isn't it? In the State of Agile report that was published early in 2021, it was reported that 97% of companies are using some sort of Agile practice. That's almost the entire planet. Out of these companies that are already practicing Agile in one way or another, they were all forced to work remotely when the pandemic began. And only a couple of months into the pandemic, Gartner did a survey that revealed 3 out of every 4 CFO had decided already in April to keep their temporary remote positions as permanently remote. Gartner kept surveying people and the trend kept continuing. The numbers kept increasing. 82%, 90%. People were seeing the impact, the positive impact that remote work had on their businesses until in July of 2021, Gartner actually predicted that over half of the global knowledge workers will be remote by the end of 2021. You see, I've seen this trend happening for many years, for almost a decade. What the pandemic did was that it accelerated the progress, but it also made the globe aware that this is in fact what is happening in the world. But now let me ask you another question. Do you work remotely or do you work from home? Because there is a difference. The main difference is remote work gives you freedom. You get to work from anywhere. But a forced work from home in the middle of a global health crisis does the exact opposite. It takes your freedom away. We know that distributed companies are becoming agile. 97% is no low number. And we know that that agile companies are becoming distributed. They have been for many years and for various reasons. For example, accessing a new market or accessing cheaper talent or just generally creating more inclusive and more diverse workplaces. So to say that remote work is the future of work, it sounds a little naive to me every time I hear it, because I think it is the reality of work. And those of you watching this, if you're honest about the situation, I want to ask you this. What is the first step to addressing every human challenge? Isn't it but to accept the reality as it is? Now, if you're with me, and if you accept that this is in fact the reality, let's look at ourselves, our skill set as leaders, what we need to unlearn and what we need to learn. So leadership qualities that you need to unlearn. I'm going to mention 3 of them. We all have them. I am guilty of having all of them in various scenarios, and I want you to look within yourself and identify them too. Number 1, it's what I call seagull leadership. If you have never heard of that term before, seagull leadership is when you as a leader drop in, interfere, and leave. Seagull leaders never have time for their employees, but they have a very huge appetite for knowing what the employees are doing and stopping them in the middle of their flow, and oftentimes interfering in what the person is doing. They don't do that out of malice, though. We always do this out of care and passion and curiosity, but the impact is what I just described. Number 2, military leadership. We also refer to this one as command and control. It's when you as a leader make a decision, inform your people of that decision, they execute on it, they give you a report, you analyze the report, you make a new decision, you inform them, they carry it out, they produce reports, you analyze it, you make a new decision, and the cycle goes on and on and on. And once again, we all do this. The problem with this style of leadership, even for small problem solving in short periods of time, is that there is no place for the underlings, for the employees, to actually make decisions that impact them on their own. And the third one is spotlight leadership. That is when the leader speaks at people instead of speaking with them. We see a lot of organizations where the leader calls hundreds or even thousands of people onto an online meeting only for those people to sit quietly in front of their laptops and watch the leader, and at the very best, the interaction that they have with the leader is to applaud them in the chat box. But what is actually some of the qualities that we need to learn? So if we let go of these 3 qualities that we all have and we resort to from time to time, the 4 pillars of remote leadership are what I'm going to base this presentation on. Number 1 is asynchronous communication. This is the most important pillar in remote organizations and in the skill set that leaders need to acquire and thrive for. To make it really tangible for you, let me just ask you this question, and we're soon going to have a poll. So the first question is, what are some of the tools that you currently use in your organization for communication? Answers that I usually get are Slack, Microsoft Teams, Jira, phone calls, Confluence, GitLab, Azure DevOps. Now think about how you use these tools for exchanging information and communicating. And let's just look at a few scenarios and see which one resonates with you. Becky, could you please launch the poll? So the scenarios are these 4. Which of these resonate with you? Just choose the right one on the poll. The first one is, most of the information is actually found in the chat. The second one is, we have lots of meetings and I go to a lot of them because I don't want to miss out. The third one is, pieces of information about one thing have to be fetched from many different tools. And number 4 is, I know the information I want is there in some tool, I just don't know where or how to find it. So which scenario resonates with you the most? Let's give it a few more seconds until we have enough answers. And when you're ready, Becky, you can close the poll when you think is the right time, and we can see the results. So you guys can see how you're answering to this. As you see, we have a combination of answers. That's interesting. I hope that from these results, you can see that you're not alone. These scenarios are very common in all organizations that suddenly went remote, but also those that were striving to have offices in different countries already before the pandemic. Could you close the poll now? Beautiful, thank you. So the fundamental skill that you need to have as a remote leader, you need to learn it and practice it on a daily basis and thrive to get really, really good at this, is choosing the right mode of communication for the purpose that you're trying to achieve. A remote leader needs to know what are the modes. The first one is synchronous and the second one is asynchronous. Synchronous mode of communication is where exchange of information happens in real time. I say something, you hear it, and we exchange ideas, half-baked ideas, until we reach a conclusion or not. Asynchronous is a slightly different. Synchronous is actually what we see in online meetings or chats or phone calls. Synchronous is amazing for decision-making, quick synchronization, coaching, celebrations. It's amazing. So I'm not saying don't have meetings or don't have phone calls, don't get me wrong. But great remote organizations communicate asynchronously by default. So let's look at what is asynchronous. Asynchronous mode of communication, the most common tool you know for that is email. It's a mode of communication in which I give you the information when I am ready to do so, but I give you the power and the freedom to choose when to receive it, process it, and respond back. What this does is an empowerment of every individual in the organization to have enough time and enough comfort to process the information and produce better insights and results. So what is asynchronous good for? What purpose does it achieve, or how should we look at it? Asynchronous is great for sharing information of any kind or gathering information of any kind. You see, for every decision making, you need to share information and you need to gather information. But instead of having a meeting that's 4 hours long, where you share and receive and make decisions, you can have the sharing and receiving or gathering of data asynchronously over a slightly extended period of time, and then just have a 20-minute meeting to make the decisions. You can break up every collaboration into its parts and choose which parts to do asynchronously and which parts to do synchronously. What is the next pillar that a remote leader needs to actually focus on? It is transparency. We leaders really like transparency, don't we? We want to know what our employees are working on and how they're doing, and we do that out of care and passion. It's never out of malice, we know that. But transparency needs to be both ways. We're often not very good at providing transparency for our underlings to see what we're working on. But what is transparency specifically in a remote organization? Once again, let me ask you to reflect on a question. Think about a piece of information that you need from someone else in the organization. You're working on something, on a project, and you need some information from someone. Where is that information right now? The answers that I usually get are GitLab, Jira, Slack, email, in some chat. But let's be honest, the most common answer is it's in their head. It is in someone's head. Now let's reverse the direction of that question. Imagine someone in the organization needs a piece of information from you. Where is that information right now? Well, the answers I usually get are GitLab, Confluence, Jira, Slack, Microsoft Teams, some email. But if we're really honest with ourselves, it is also very common that we keep the information in our own head. So if you said in their head or in my head, you know why your calendar is filled with meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. It's because information is not shared in a systematic way to empower asynchronous communication. You see, if we have true transparency, transparency enables asynchronous communication to happen, to exist. And if you remember, I told you that the best remote organizations communicate asynchronously by default, and they put meetings and in real-time conversations as the last resort. So what is transparency in a remote organization? You see, transparency can be divided in two pieces. One is transparency over information, where information is. You just told me, or you just told yourself, you know exactly where the information is. Even if it's in someone's head, you know exactly who, and you know how to find them and get that information. But what we don't have in most organizations is transparency over processes. That is how information is organized, how it's processed, and generally how information is exchanged. Nobody ever knows, like if a piece of information needs to go to email or needs to go to chat. Maybe that has become clear after one and a half year working from home. But oftentimes we don't have explicit understanding or shared understanding in the organization for how information is exchanged. So in order to create that transparency as a leader, you need to start with yourself. And you might think, like, if we create this kind of documentation over information and processes and where things go and how we organize information, wouldn't that really create like some sort of documentation hell? Wouldn't that be too overwhelming? I don't think I want to work in an organization like that. You're right if you're asking yourself that, but there is a key to that. When you're thinking about creating transparency, the key to focus on is simplify. What is simplification? Simplification in Agile is defined as the art of maximizing the amount of work not done. While in remote work, I define it as the art of maximizing the number of tools not used. And how do we do that? Well, I give you 2 steps. Step 1, write down the names of all the tools that you use. And don't cheat if you use Slack and Microsoft Teams, both of them in your team, but also sometimes chat with your colleagues in iMessage or Signal. Write those down too. Then group all of these tools that you've put on paper or in some digital whiteboard based on the purpose that they're trying to serve. Go group by group, and in each group, pick one and boldly, courageously retire the rest. If you don't have the executive power to do that, what you can do at your level of leadership is at least start a conversation around it. Ask people, why do we need Slack and Microsoft Teams at the same time? Why can't we choose one? And this is key. This is very important to actually focus on this. Pillar number 3 is diversity, inclusion, and empathy. When you're thinking about diversity and inclusion, oftentimes we think about ethnicity or skin color. But in a remote organization, I want to go beyond that. I want you to think about technology, for example. With a global workforce, not everyone has the same access to bandwidth, operating system, a stable network. So when you're designing your work processes, your business processes, you need to think about these things and bring them into account. One of the services that my company provides is actually helping organizations to create a stable and inclusive infrastructure services so that everyone can work on their systems from anywhere, any network, any device in the world. The next one is technology. The next one is accessibility. So when you're thinking about accessibility, one of the things that people don't usually think about is how, as leaders, we give instructions for how the collaboration is supposed to happen. But also in our designs, we sometimes forget some of the most common disabilities that exist in the world. 1 out of every 12 men and 1 out of every 200 women are colorblind. And the majority of people do not ever disclose this disability to their employers. So if you're designing for a transaction, for a presentation, and you create like images that are green and red, a lot of people in your organization might not see that and might not even say that they can't see the difference. So think about how you approach design, both in presentations and also in your processes from an inclusive point of view. The next one is privacy. People do not have the same threshold for how much information they put out there on the internet. So always ask for permission and consent before you share people's private data, such as picture, name, email address, especially on social media. Never do that. Never assume that people are comfortable with their information being out there, even if they don't say so. And the last pillar is continuous learning. I'm pretty sure that if you are working in an Agile organization, which 97% chance you are, you have heard about continuous learning or creating a learning organization. But what I want to focus on here is your individual skills as a leader. One of the skills that you need to master is time management. Respect your calendar. Carve out time for your breakfast, your lunch, your dinner, your family time, your workout, everything, and respect your calendar. Separate work time from family time or every other thing that you have in your calendar. The next one is creating boundaries for time and devices. Using different devices for work, if you can't afford it, using different devices for work and personal use could be really fantastic if you have the money for it. But even if you don't, you can use different apps. Or for managing relationships, creating boundaries in relationships. You can chat with your colleagues in your Slack or Microsoft Teams about work in certain channels, and you can talk about all the fun activities that you do or socializing in a different channel. You should create those boundaries explicitly. And the challenge, the problem that most people have with mixing life and work too much and having trouble separating the two is that leaders do not have haven't put enough time and effort into creating these boundaries. And last but not least is self-care and movement. Digital disconnection in a world that is constantly connected is a must for our psychological health. Socializing and working out or moving your body. For socializing, I want to tell you a secret. Are you with me? You don't have to wait for HR to give you permission or choose the people you're allowed to socialize with. You are a free human being. You can choose who to socialize with. I know that isolation is a top problem for remote workers. Go out there and socialize. Your friends do not have to be your colleagues. It's possible to meet people outside. If you want to learn more about remote and agile leadership, feel free to join my courses or my workshops at remoteforever.com. And I know that you must be thinking right now, okay, this is all nice and dandy, but it's so much. Where do I start? So let me give you the start button. The start button is this, and it's a little bit provocative. It's no mandatory meetings. Tomorrow, go to your organization, go to your team and say, team, from today on, no meeting is mandatory. That includes all of our rituals like daily and retrospectives and all of that. No meeting is mandatory. Okay, before you panic, let me tell you this. If you call for a meeting, you show up and nobody else shows up because of this new fantastic rule, how do you feel? You probably feel embarrassed or humiliated or really terrible. Let's put that feeling aside and look more objectively for a moment. What information do you get from this reality that nobody showed up? It's one of the three reasons. Either the purpose was not clear, or people didn't know what was the desired outcome, or they had no idea what was in it for them. I use an abbreviation for this, or an acronym. It's POW, purpose, outcome, what's in it for them. Next time you want to create a meeting, make sure that you clearly communicate the POW. Once this happens, what happens in the organization is the impact cascades. Lots of meetings that don't have a clear POW get removed from the calendars, and people think twice before calling for a meeting, and they get creative, finding ways to solve problems asynchronously or exchange information asynchronously before defaulting to meeting. This would improve your processes. This would start your remote work transformation. And I'm going to end this presentation with a gift to you. If you want to know more about my work and you want to know more about the two other pillars that I mentioned earlier, business operations and culture, and you want to get practical examples of how we've done this, go to remoteforever.com/ebook and get my book for free. The web page says you're going to get only the first chapter, but don't worry. I'm going to send everyone who signs up this week the full book. I've been Molood Ceccarelli, and thank you so much for listening to this presentation.
Well, thank you, Molood. That was such an extremely presentation.
All right, I'm going to stop the sharing so you can just see me.
Okay, well, thanks, Molood.
Thank you for having me.
Sorry, Rod, there's a slight delay on your voice. Have you got another device?
Sorry?
There's a slight delay on your voice. Is there want to just try talking again?
Oh dear, I'm sorry about that. Is that better? Okay. I'll start again. Thank you, Molood, for this insightful presentation.
You are welcome, and I hope that the people who listened to it enjoyed and at least got some inspiration for what to do next.
I'm sure they did. And also, there are lots of questions, and I believe that they're quite happy to join us on the hub afterwards. Questions.
Yes,
Okay.
let's use the hub for asynchronous communication, right?
Absolutely. And I do have a few questions before we go into the hub. I was going to say that my first question is about one of the phrases that stuck out for me was asynchronization by default. That is really quite a powerful statement that calls for culture change in organizations. Is that really possible that organizations can go to that asynchronization by default? Do you have any examples?
In fact, there are organizations that work only asynchronously. I am not a proponent of that because I'm a social being. I love the interactions that happen in real time. But yes, there are even tools that are created by organizations that are completely asynchronous. Almanac is an example. It's a new startup, but they're growing really fast. YAC is another one. These two organizations are both asynchronous. But a great example that has existed for more than a decade that I always go to is GitLab. And the second one is Basecamp. GitLab is a large organization that communicates asynchronously by default. Basecamp is another one. They even have an amazing book called Remote and another one called Rework, where they have outlined exactly how they work. And when you read it now, after almost 10 years of publication, you see how resonant all of these rules and values are for creating the culture. So yes, Rod, it is absolutely possible. Defaulting to synchronous comes from the mindset of having always worked in an office where people are unproductive and the time not having value, energy not having that much value. So presence in the office has been valued over effectiveness in the communication. And because we're human beings who are social, we exchange information in real time a lot faster, and we think that is actually more effective. But when the organization goes remote, problems get exposed.
Okay, I sense that there was a little bit of concern amongst our listeners when you talked about perhaps replacing meetings with asynchronous management. I think I felt the ripples come through the screen with people saying, my goodness, we can't do without meetings, Molood. That's a step too far. Could you just say a little bit more about this? Is it really possible, perhaps even to do away with meetings completely, perhaps with the firms you've just mentioned?
I did a challenge where I went 1 year without a meeting. It was very difficult, but it was possible. I like extremes because they guide our thinking. So when I said no mandatory meetings, remember I said mandatory meetings. I didn't say no meetings. When you make meetings optional and you focus on purpose, desired outcome, and what's in it for people and communicate that very clearly, people tend to want to go to the meeting. They want to participate in that meeting because they know what it can give them. They know how they can contribute, and they know exactly what's going to be created at the end of the meeting. The problem with most of our meetings in organizations is that either the purpose is not clear for the person who calls it, or it's not communicated clearly. And the second most common problem is there is no structure, there is no facilitator. One of the key skills that every remote leader needs to learn is online facilitation. We have a fantastic course in that, and we have like more than 200 graduates from that course who who sing praises for it. I'm very proud of that course that we created because it was created after a lot of courses that I took myself and a lot of practical experiences that we had. But learning how to facilitate a conversation asynchronously, a collaboration asynchronously. It's not something you learn anywhere else. We always think of facilitation for the meeting. So if your meeting has a clear purpose, outcome, what's in it for me, and a clear structure, preferably with the help of an experienced facilitator, people want to attend the meetings. But this rule of no mandatory meeting, as I said in the presentation, the main impact it has on people is that it makes their brain pause before they send that next meeting invitation with no description in it. And it makes them ask, can I solve this problem without a meeting? Perhaps I can even optimize this process or this page, or maybe I can merge these two meetings into one. Maybe I can make it shorter and more effective by communicating the big chunk of the information sharing asynchronously, and then people would only come to that short, effective, sweet, and fabulous meeting with a prepared mindset.
That's great. Well, I hope that's reassured our listeners that are a little bit worried about that, Molood. Well, unfortunately, we have to leave it there. But I really would like to thank you again. That really was an insightful and extremely interesting webinar. So it was a pleasure to be involved with you. So I'd like to thank everyone. Oh, thank you. Yeah, so I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today and being part of International Leadership Week 2021. There is an opportunity for our audience to engage with further discussions on our website, www.institutelm.com, and please post any questions for Molood on the hub, where, in the best traditions of asynchronous management, Molood has kindly offered to join us on the hub to answer your questions. So the questions that have come through, if you could go to the hub and post them on the hub, but Molood will answer them. Alternatively, please use a hashtag on social posts, hashtag ILW21. I would like to thank our speaker once again, and thank you to our sponsors, Belbin and Edinburgh Business School. Thank you and goodbye to everyone. Thank you, Molood.
Thank you. Thank you and goodbye.